Hello, historians. When World War I started, we saw a situation in Europe where British and French soldiers were fighting together against German soldiers in northern France because an Austrian archduke was killed by Serbian terrorists in the city of Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia. What? How on earth did we get to this point? That is going to be the topic of today's lesson, where we'll look at one component of the beginning of World War I, and that's the alliances that were arranged in the decades prior to the outbreak of the war. Welcome to History 102, everyone. My name, as always, is Prof. J, and I am, as always, your history professor. There are three main alliances we want to take a look at today. The first is the dual alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary, signed in 1879. The second is the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, signed 3 years later in 1882. And finally, we have the Franco-Russian Alliance Military Convention, signed between France and Russia, appropriately enough, 10 years later in 1892. The dual alliance is signed between Germany and Austria-Hungary. In this agreement, the two nations pledge that if either one of them is attacked unprovoked by the Russians, the other will get involved to help their ally. So if Germany is attacked by the Russians, the Austrians will mobilize their army and attack the Russians in defense of their friend, the Germans, and same thing vice versa. 3 years later, the Triple Alliance was formed that adds Italy into this alliance. The provisions of the dual alliance are still operative. They are not replaced. They're simply added on to with this new agreement. According to this agreement, if France were to attack either Germany or Italy, then all three members of this alliance have to mobilize their armies, declare war on the French, and fight them. So if France attacks Italy, as you can see on the map, they share a common border. Austria-Hungary and Germany must mobilize their armies and declare war on the French. Same thing if France declares war against Germany. As you can see on the map, they also share a common border. If that happens, then Austria-Hungary and Italy have to mobilize their forces and attack the French. If you're the Russians and the French, you're looking at this going, oh, okay, so we've got some countries in the middle of Europe that seem like they're moving towards agreeing with each other and making defensive alliances. Maybe we should make an alliance with the other parties to protect ourselves and force these countries in the middle to fight on two fronts, which leads in 1892 to the Franco-Russian Alliance Military Convention, wherein France and Russia mutually pledge to defend each other with the full strength of their armies should either of them be attacked unprovoked by the Germans. Why the Germans specifically? Well, of the three countries in the middle of Europe, the only one that shares a border with both France and Russia is Germany. So each of those nations are seeing Germany as the main threat here. So there's only one country that's left. We've talked about France, we've talked about Russia, we've talked about Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. What about the Brits? What are they doing? Well, even though they're friendly with the French in the beginning of the 20th century, no one fully knows for sure what the Brits would do if a European-wide war were to break out. The Brits are going to get involved in World War I because of Belgium. In 1830, Belgium was created as a brand new nation that was neutral to not upset the balance of powers between a number of European countries that existed at that time. The British agreed to be the guarantor of Belgian neutrality. Since Belgium is neutral, although they have a small force to defend themselves, their aim isn't to build up a big army. They need a bigger power to help defend them and protect their neutrality. That's what the British are doing. You see here on the map the movement of troops in Germany's Schlieffen Plan, named after one of their former commanders of their armed forces. According to the Schlieffen Plan, because the border between Germany and France was well defended on the French side, if Germany needed to attack the French again, they had to go around those fortifications and through Belgium. Belgium is also flat, it's open territory, and it's easy for a large number of troops to move through it at speed. So for World War I, Austrian's Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated in the Bosnian city of Sarajevo by Serbian terrorists. Austria, being quite upset about this, understandably, before they declared war on the Serbians, they turned to their allies, the Germans, and made 100% sure that Germany was going to have their back, asking them, if we have to go to war against Serbia, that might provoke the Russians. Will you have our back in that situation? And the Germans said, bro, I got you. Go off, king. So the Austrians do declare war on the Serbians, which then brings the Russians in to declare war against the Austrians. That activates the dual alliance. Now Germany has to protect its friend Austria by declaring war on the Russians. When they do that, that activates the Franco-Russian Alliance, which means the French have to get involved to protect their friends, the Russians, by declaring war on the Germans. Germany and Austria-Hungary turn around and declare war on the French in turn. The German army executes the Schlieffen Plan, moves through Belgium. That provokes the British to declare war against the Germans and siding with the French and the Russians. The Italians, meanwhile, in early 1915, they switched sides and declared war on their former allies, the Austrians and the Germans, because the British and the French promised them more territory once they won the war. There'll be a couple of other smaller powers that will get involved, but by late August of 1914, all the major belligerents are involved in the war. The Brits, the French, the Germans, the Austrians, the Italians, and the Russians, which helps then to explain how we find ourselves in a situation where British and French soldiers are teaming up to fight against German troops in northern France because an Austrian archduke was killed by Serbian terrorists in Bosnia, and why Russian troops are fighting Austrian troops who are fighting Italian troops in Eastern and Southeastern Europe for that same reason. I hope this explanation is making this confusing situation a little bit more clear. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you all again in the next one.